Hey guys, welcome to part 1 of this Rising World building tutorial. If you've ever tried building in Rising World and thought, why is this block going one way and then another time it's going a different way, or resizing keeps changing on me, don't worry, you're definitely not alone with that. The building system in this game is really powerful, but it can also be pretty overwhelming when you first start learning it. There's a lot of tools, settings, controls that all work together, and if you don't understand the basics, building can quickly become frustrating in this game. In this first tutorial, I'm going to explain the core building mechanics that everything else builds upon. And by the end of the video, you'll understand how these tools work, and more importantly, why they work the way they do. I've already built a small room that has examples of everything we'll be covering. So instead of building an entire house from scratch, we can focus on learning the tools themselves. So yeah, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to talk about is probably the most important concept in the entire building system. At first, yeah, changing the size of a block seems pretty straightforward. You make it longer, shorter, wider, taller. We all get that. But as you'll see later in this tutorial, understanding how sizing works is what makes several of the other building tools make sense. Especially modular snapping, which is over there. But we'll get to that later. I want to just show real quick that these 3 blocks right here are different sizes of blocks. This one is a single block. This is 8 of them together. And this is, what is this, 4, 8, 12, 16, 32 blocks together. So it may not make sense right now, but that breaking it's just one block. This, you can see breaking it, and it's 8 blocks. And this breaks in tiny blocks, and you can actually just keep on making it smaller and smaller. So it's more and more, right? I just want to start it off here because this really is a very important part. Okay, so now let's look at the controls for changing a block size. You hold shift while using the arrow keys and page up and page down. The arrow keys will change it in this kind of direction, and the page up and page down while holding shift changes its size up and down, like tall and short. One thing I recommend getting used to is sizing a block instead of rotating it. I know this block right here looks like this block. It is this block, but it's not rotated. It's only sized differently. So instead of this, and then you have this block, and instead of rotating it, I really recommend getting used to changing its size like that. That might sound a little strange right now, but there's a really good reason for it. When you resize a block, its orientation stays the exact same, which makes working with snapping and positioning much easier later on. If you rotate a block instead, you're changing its orientation, and that affects how other things react or interact with it. So rotating does exactly what you expect it to do. It rotates the object with the page up and page down and the arrow keys. This is different from sizing. When you resize a block, you're stretching and shrinking it along one of its axes. And when you're rotating it, you're actually changing the orientation of that block. It might seem like both methods kind of do the same thing visually, but really they're completely different. And understanding that difference will make building much easier in the long run. Okay, so next we got reset rotation and reset size. Okay, sometimes you're experimenting with a block or building something and you realize you completely messed it up. Instead of deleting it and starting over, Rising World lets you reset the size and rotation back to their defaults, which is really nice and helpful. So if you use backspace, you can actually reset the rotation of it. So just hitting backspace, it'll turn like this block into this block. And same thing for resetting the size. If you have a different size of a block and you want to reset it, hold shift and backspace. Okay. This section is pretty simple, but it can come in handy. Okay, so another really cool thing is copying a shape. If you have a block in your hand and you look at another block and hit the insert key, you'll copy it, the size and the rotation. So you see how this one's kind of angled? I can copy that. Okay, that's really self-explanatory. If you got another block that you want, say you're building something and you want to not have to precisely get it back to the way it was, you can just insert key and there you go. Okay, so something that's important to understand is that the scale and rotation of a block, they don't change based on which direction you're facing. The block always remembers its own orientation. That means if you walk around to the other side of it, the resize direction, the rotation are still based on the block itself and not where you're standing. Okay, so once you understand this, the building system starts feeling much more predictable. Okay, so like for example, if I'm using the up arrow here, you can see that the block is rotating to the left. Okay. Now, if I'm standing over here, you would think the up arrow should spin it to the left, but really it's spinning towards us right now. And facing this way, it spins it to the right. It's just because it doesn't matter which way you're facing, it's always going to just remember its orientation and rotate the same way. Okay. Same thing with resizing. It's always going to resize the same way, no matter which way you're facing. So that's very important because it can be very confusing as to like why when you build a wall or something and you're using a certain key to scale it, and then you're over here building the other wall and all of a sudden you have to use the opposite keys. You know, it's only because you're facing the other way and it looks like it's going the other way, but really it's the same. Okay, so now let's look at flipping an object or block. Okay, you use the end key for this, and it's really useful when you're wanting to create like symmetrical builds or have something just flip the other way. So like, for example, this furnace here has this little spot where you put the fuel, right? And say you want to put this along the wall here. You wouldn't be able to access this. So you would flip this furnace that way it's on the right side. And that can come in handy for a lot of different situations. But it really comes in handy for stuff like this that only has one thing on one side. Okay, so now we've reached the most confusing part of the building system. Modular snapping. This is also why I spent so much time talking about sizing earlier. Modular snapping doesn't just look at the block, it looks at the size and dimensions of the block. Okay, so because of that, the way you size the block's dimensions is how it determines how it snaps to the other blocks, more or less. Once you understand that relationship, modular snapping starts making a lot more sense. Okay, so first off, you use the enter key and the comma and period key, or the less than and greater than symbol keys. I don't know what those are called. So pressing enter, you'll see that when I enter into modular snapping, these blue dots appear. And if you've messed with the building system before and entered into modular snapping, you've probably noticed this issue where you want to put the block here or somewhere and you can't because you're like, well, how do I get it centered on this block right here or something, you know? but then some other times you're able to because there's more snapping points. That's because it's going based off of the size of the block itself. Okay, so this section here, this section and this section, they both are the exact same, but they're different. This one is one complete block. If I break it, you'll see that was one complete block. So we make it back to the way it was, you'll see that's how it was. Now this one, these are single blocks. It's the same as doing it like this. I've seen a lot of times people are trying to make their floor of their house, and they use a big piece. And then they're trying to end up maybe building a wall around it. And then they're kind of confused as to, man, why can't I want to just place a block here and then another block here, but I can't. It only snaps here. Well, that's because modular snapping makes snapping points on all the corners, in the middle of each corner on the edge, and then in the middle of the face. Okay, so you have 9 snapping points on each face and edge, so to speak. If that doesn't make sense yet, just keep in mind that it depends on how big the block is. This is one block still. And so is this. This is one block as well. Rising World keeps in mind that this is one block, so modular snapping will work as one block here and same here. So you see the same grid pattern of the snapping points is here, it's just much larger here. Okay. Now that being explained, what would you say this little section here is? Would you think this is 3 blocks? Or what? Based off of what I've just explained, what would you think the size of this block is? If you guessed that it is actually just 1 block wide, like this, then you guessed correctly, and you're probably starting to understand how the modular snapping works. Now, as for the greater than and then the less than keys, that's actually to adjust where on the block it's actually snapping to. So if I move it around, you can see it's snapping to the corner, and the middle edge, the other corner, and it just kind of rotates and goes through each snapping point. And that can come in handy for a lot of different reasons. I'd recommend experimenting with placing blocks different places, using different snapping points, and so on. So here I've made 2 examples of why the snapping point matters so much of when building stuff, especially when you try to build a curve or something like this, like an arch. You see here that I have the snapping point set to the middle bottom right of this block. Okay, and I don't mean the middle right of the blue dots, the snapping points themselves. I mean the block itself. Now, if I place this block down and then say I rotate it a little bit, and I place that one down, and I place another one on top, and I keep rotating it as I place it, you'll see that the same thing happens here. It's smooth on this side, but this side, the blocks are sticking out. There's gaps in between it. Just like this. Now, you can make it so the blocks don't stick out. It's smooth on both sides. And the way you would do that is you move the snapping point to the back end of the block, and then you rotate it. And as you can see, because the snapping point is actually on the back end here, it's rotating from that snapping point. So anytime you rotate it, it's going to rotate based off of that snapping point. And you can create curves. You can create really anything. Okay? I hope that's understandable. I hope I explained it good enough. But that's kind of the importance of snapping. Or the modular snapping. So next thing I want to talk about is manual positioning, and use the right control key for that. If you've tried building before, you've probably noticed there's times where it's like you need to see a certain angle, but you can't really get to it. Or if you want to place a block somewhere, but you want to kind of look from the corner of your screen, whatever it may be, you can hit that right control key, enter manual positioning, and now you can look wherever you want, and that ghost of that placement is going to still be there. It's going to stay right there. And then you can look from it from all angles, and you can move it around still. And it doesn't matter which way you're looking, you can place it wherever you want. Okay? It can come in very handy. It really it gives you complete control over where the block is placed, and something that you'll more than likely constantly use once you become comfortable with it. Personally, I switch between modular snapping and manual positioning all the time, depending on what I'm working with, but you'll get used to it the more you use it. Okay, and finally, let's take a look at the radial menu. If you hold the C key while holding a block, this menu gives you quick access to all the tools that we talked about today. Okay, if you ever forget a keybind, or if you just simply, I don't know, prefer selecting commands from a menu instead of using shortcuts, you'll find everything right here, okay? If you hover over any of this stuff, you'll see on the left side of the screen, it shows the keybind. And that'll, over time, help you get used to using the keybinds themselves. Because not all the time you want to just going to this menu and adjust something, right? So if you click on this advanced tab, I'm not going to talk about any of this stuff in this video. I will mention these top three here. The move, scale, and the rotate precision. They do exactly what it sounds like. If I click on the move precision and say I click on the 1, if I'm using the manual positioning that we did over here, right? And then I'm using the arrow keys to move it around, you'll see that it moves by 1 block. Now, if I change this to, I don't know, 0.5, that it'll move half a block. And do that whatever size you want, and you can get really precise with the things you're doing. Okay? Same thing goes for the scale. If you want to scale it up by 1 block every time, you can. If you want it to be more precise, you can do that as well. Much slower that way, but you can be a lot more, well, precise with it. And the same thing goes for the rotation. 90 degrees, 45 degrees, 15, 10, 5. And get real precise. Okay? And yeah, that's going to wrap up part 1 of this tutorial. Hopefully the building system feels a little less intimidating now. If you have any questions at all, feel free to ask them in the comments. I'm more than happy to try to explain a little bit more. And if this tutorial helped you out, I'd really appreciate a like. Thanks for watching and hanging out, and I'll see you in the next one.